Zimbabwe's political environment is known to be hostile, and the situation even gets worse, particularly during the political period. And with the elections coming in a few months, we don't know if this could change, but we know that the opposition has embarked on a massive campaign heading towards the elections. And we don't know if this is the year that change will finally come for Zimbabweans. Like the Bible says, if there's hope for Israel, we don't know if there is hope for Zimbabwe. The show is Big Talk, and my name is Tinemimbo Chibaki. The show is brought to you by the Citizens Voice Network, and today I have yet another vibrant and dynamic gentleman from the Citizens Coalition for Change. He's the National Deputy Spokesperson, Cde Ostalos Siziba. Thank you for joining us and welcome to Big Talk.
Thank you very much.
How has been the journey so far with the year 2023? How has been the journey for the Citizens Coalition for Change? And you know, we're just a few months towards the election. How has been? And we know we're coming in hard. We see from the tweets, we see from Facebook and from the reports. How has it been for the party and for you also?
Thank you very much, Tino. Look, it's been a roller coaster year for the Citizens Coalition for Change, as led by Advocate Nelson Chamisa. We are reaching a very important, decisive moment, not just as a party, but in the history of our country. You know that we have entered into the shadows of an election, an important election for us as a coalition and of course as the people of Zimbabwe, because we are presented with an opportunity to have a democratic breakthrough. And you know that transitions under authoritarian tutelage are very difficult. The road on a transition is a very bumpy and a difficult journey. We have been in the receiving end of state-sponsored political violence. We have also seen the attack to the authentic alternative, which is obviously the CCC. You have seen that they've invested so much to try and make sure that we are dismembered, we are disorganized, and we are disenfranchised and relegated out of the politics of this country. But thanks to the people of Zimbabwe, thanks to the citizens, President Chamisa having a social contract with the people of Zimbabwe, we have seen the CCC movement coming into play. And mind you that we have done a lot of things to try and make sure that we prepare our vehicle for election, but we haven't done the necessary and the most important political steps in our march to victory. We have said that 2023 for us is the citizens' march to victory, and we haven't begun that journey in political terms. But you see that there have been a lot of events happening. We are also having this conversation after a mind-blowing report from Al Jazeera around corruption in this country. So it's a very important journey for us as a party, as a movement, and we are gearing towards the next plebiscite.
Okay, I'll take my key note from his response was also the part where you mentioned the authentic alternative, and he had to bring in the Al Jazeera document, which has been trending. And I must say, Zimbabweans, the mixed feelings from Zimbabweans, some are frustrated, some I'm sure some got to know what they knew, but they didn't know to what extent things were happening, but then now they get to know. But then that's a story for another day. And the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, the Electoral Board and the nation concluded the delimitation exercise, which was to settle the idea of boundaries when it comes to wards and constituencies. And though so many comments came, I don't know about the flows. We'll not talk about the flows according to other whistleblowers that came with the delimitation report. But after the delimitation report and the delimitation exercise, what has been the party getting up to after that, the delimitation report? What has the Citizens Coalition for Change been getting up to?
Of course, having received the reports, like you have said, we had our own views and thinking around the delimitation reports itself, particularly around how the process went about and what was produced. We, particularly to help those who have been questioning what we did with the report and what is our take, we made ourselves very clear to say we had a problem with the process. The reason why we're the problem and to raise our concerns is because the credibility of the pre-electoral processes is important if we are to have a free and fair election in this country. And it's not just for the benefit of CCC, it's not just for the benefit of ZANU, it's for the benefit of the people of Zimbabwe, because once we have free and fair processes in this country, we've had elections since 1980. All of them have been subjected to court challenges, right? And that renders Zimbabwe back into crisis of illegitimacy. We think that for the first time in the history of our country, let's have a process that is accommodative of the interests and wishes of different stakeholders, whether it's the civic society, the unions, political parties, the church, so that after the election, for the first time in the history of our country, we must be able to have the winner congratulated by the loser and the loser accepting. So that is the kind of politics that we want. So we must jettison into our politics trust in processes, and ZEC bears the constitutional, moral and political obligation that they make sure that the process is free, fair and credible, so that we have a solid social contract, so that we are able to have a government of the people, by the people, coming from the people. And once we do that, we have a strong social contract. Once we have a strong social contract, it means we are able to bury the long questions of illegitimacy. We have, for the first time in our country, a government that is agreeable, a government that is trusted by all the people. So that's why we've said, after the delimitation process, we first use Parliament as a point of entry to register our displeasures. And we said through our representative, by then Honorable Prince Dubeko Sibanda, to say these are the flaws, these are things that we think must be corrected somewhere not, right? And then the second thing we did was also to use the court as a point of entry to say we can go to court and make it clear that this is what we need. For example, at the center of Zimbabwe's electoral problems is the issue of the voters' roll. We have said the delimitation can only be quantified and qualified if different parties have the voters' roll. So we then waged a constitutional court challenge to say, to compel the commission to give us the voters' roll, so that we are able to verify and able to make sure that we are satisfied that, okay, these are the people. Because, look, the manipulation is also in and around issues of cost and so forth. So once we have the voters' roll, and ZEC, if they have nothing to hide, they must give us the voters' roll, because we are interested party, because the constitution, the electoral law is very clear that it must be verifiable, it must be authenticated by different players. We are a major political player in the politics of this country, and we deserve, and we've said, whatever fee you put as a church, give us, and then we'll pay for it. The last time we paid for the voters' roll, we audited it, different independent bodies audited it. When we exposed the flaws, ZEC refuted and said, no, that's not the authentic roll that we had purchased from the commission. So we think that we must make sure that the pre-electoral processes that are done by the commission must be legitimate and must be done. What we have done now, post the delimitation report, we are now aware of the boundaries, how the maps are going to be about, and we are obviously preparing the much anticipated processes, which are internal processes to choose candidates. We have come up with a consensus candidate selection process to ensure that we've got members of parliament, we've got councillors, we've got a presidential candidate that must represent CCC in the next plebiscite.
Okay, thank you very much for that wholesome response. And I think I would also touch a bit on, you mentioned how that even the process, the electoral processes post to the election, not just the electoral process, when we're saying people, that the citizens are taking it to the poll, but before those elections, that means every other process should be credible. But with questions, you mentioned a whole lot of flaws and other issues that CCC has with the country's electoral commission. So would that have a certain effect on how the election process would then take the course that the election process would then take? Because if we were having issues prior to the actual elections and we only have a few months before Zimbabweans take it to the poll, would that also then affect people's view, or even other political players like CCC, not just the ruling parties' view of the electoral process and even the results that are going to come after the election, seeing to it that some of these things are actually coming from the delimitation process and the delimitation report? Would that not affect how our Zimbabweans and the other political parties, which are not the ruling party, view Zimbabwe's political environment and electoral environment?
Of course, it has a bearing on the credibility of the institution that is holding our elections, and ZEC is duty bound, like I've said, to ensure that they make sure that people trust them, they make sure that participants and different stakeholders trust upon them. So the ball is in the ZEC's court to ensure that they do the constitutional duties with clarity and with precision. We expect that they can be able to correct some anomalies. We have engaged them in different respects. We've had some of our issues resolved. We've had some not being resolved. Look, that is the nature of political processes. That's why we use these different avenues as points of entry to try and make sure that where there is problems, where there is chicanery, we help that, we resolve them. It's a collective effort by different Zimbabwean citizens so that we're able to build our institutions, so that we're able to build a democracy that is sustainable, that is trusted by different people. So we are playing our role as a party, and we think that ZEC, obviously from time to time, we are always, I can tell you that I think every week we go to ZEC almost 3 or 4 times. Every week.
Every week, not
every
month.
week, not month. We engage with ZEC, whether they respond to us or they don't respond to us. We go there. We use the avenues of the court. We use different points of entries, parliament. We raise these issues. We engage commissions to make sure that we pull through and ensure that Zimbabweans have a better chance to express themselves and their will is respected. So ZEC has to do the right thing. ZEC has to ensure that the trust deficit between them and ordinary people is resolved so that people can trust electoral processes, so that people can have confidence on the outcome of the process conducted by the commission. We hope that ZEC can be able to adhere to the principles and values in the constitution. And of course, we have strategic tactical interventions that we do as a movement that wants to occupy State House and government to make sure that against all odds and difficulties, the processes must be able to give us a democratic breakthrough.
There's always been talk about the ruling party having a stronghold, particularly in the rural areas. Not all of them, but in certain rural areas. And over the last few months and weeks, we've seen your president, Advocate Nelson Chamisa, and the team touring the country. How has been the response or the reception from the tours and all the campaigns that you guys have been doing throughout the country?
Thank you very much. I think that I'll take the opportunity to actually debunk and demystify the myth that ZANU is strong in the countryside. ZANU-PF is a rejected political organization. It has expired in terms of its mandate from the people of Zimbabwe. People no longer trust the government. People no longer trust Mr. Mnangagwa. People don't trust ZANU-PF. And I'll say this in respect of the following reasons. Number one, there was a research conducted by independent research institutions like MPOI. They made it very clear that majority of Zimbabweans, more than 50% of Zimbabweans, think that the government doesn't trust them. So there's a greater majority of Zimbabweans that have no confidence on government. Number one. Number two, the greater majority of Zimbabweans also think that ZANU-PF is there in government without their mandate. So people don't trust the government. That's number two. Number three, we traversed the countryside. In 2021, we went to the countryside on a convergence platform to talk to Zimbabwean different stakeholders, traditional leaders, community leaders, residents associations, and different players. And when we went to the countryside, what is shocking and what is so revealing about ZANU's expiry in the minds and hearts of ordinary people is that Zimbabweans, when we went there with President Chamisa to converse and converge with the people, ZANU-PF unleashed terror and violence, both on us who were coming to meet the people and the people who wanted to come and meet with the president. What it shows, no one in their right state of mind would use force and violence to their supporters. You can only do that to people who differ with you. So ZANU has been defeated at the level of ideas. ZANU has been defeated at the level of superior logic, because politics, at the end of the day, is contestation of ideas. Democracy and electoral contestation is about those with superior policy to change the lives of ordinary people. So ZANU under Mnangagwa, because it's a ruling establishment without ruling ideas. The difference between the so-called new dispensation and Mugabe's regime is that Mugabe's administration had a semblance of ideological clarity and some semblance in their fascism and dictatorship that dominant ideas. You could tell that there is intellectual rigor at the center. At the present moment, there is no ruling idea. You ask ZANU-PF that what is your dominant ideological disposition? You can't trace it because on one hand, Christopher Mtswanga, for example, will be talking about a socialist revolution, them having winning the revolution on Marxist-Leninist dispossession. Mthuli Ncube, on one hand, the government minister, will be pursuing a private sector-led economy. That's pure neoliberal right-wing politics. On one hand, they go to Europe, go to Brussels and say, we are open for business, we are pursuing a private sector-led economy, anyone wants to come and invest. But in the backyard here, they are mobilizing people on, scientific socialist narratives. So there is a clear disjuncture between ZANU-PF and the academics or the academia or the intelligentsia that is supposed to be informing government. So that lack of ideological clarity, that lack of a dominant idea, that lack of a ruling idea is revealed by disconnected policies. If you see what Mthuli Ncube does, and if you see the reversals, you remember that a few months ago there was a disconnecting between what Mthuli Ncube had said, what government had said, and the RBZ. You also saw it recently with the sanctions issue, them saying one thing, government saying another. You have also seen the disconnecting between what George Charamba would say and Nick Mangwana. It's the lack of coherent ideological clarity at the center of government. So that is the foundational basis of the collapse of ZANU-PF as a dominant political organization in our country. It has expired. It no longer have dominant ideas. It no longer have clarity of thought. So the lack of ideas come now is reflected with the lack of coherent policies. So when you don't have coherent policies, it means that people don't trust you. It's not just ordinary people, but it's business, right? If you saw that shaking what they do to the economy is because they pronounce one statutory instrument, reverse it tomorrow. It's because there is no dominant idea. There is no governing philosophy, to put it aptly clear. So CCC as an alternative now has clarity in terms of what must be done. We think that Zimbabwe should be rescued through center-left politics. We think that Zimbabwe needs a social democratic developmental state anchored on the pillars of justice, freedom and solidarity. That is our belief. And at the end of it all, we think that all this must be putting citizens back at the center. So ideologically, CCC has clarity of thought. CCC thinks that if we do that, because without a dominant idea, you won't be able to have policies that are pro-people, policies that are pro the citizen. Because what has happened for the past 42 years is the relegation of ordinary people into the periphery, out of the center. Whereas in a democracy, it must be citizens at the center and government leaders at the periphery, because they are servants serving the people. But now what you see is a reverse. We are chefs, it's about us. You see them flaunting and trying to present an atmosphere that they are the messiahs of this country. It's the ordinary people that hire us, because we are the taxpayers. The government answers to us. But when we question government, what do? They fire tear gas. What do? They take you sellouts. But what we have seen in Al Jazeera right now is a clarity and answer, qualitatively and quantitatively, who are the sellouts in this country. Because we have argued as CCC that forget the political rhetoric that no, that one is a sellout, that one is a puppet. The Al Jazeera report is laying bare to all to see who are the puppets. Because this country is now being sold to anyone. This country is being looted hook, line and sinker, sold to any bidder, whether they are from the west or the east. You saw those guys. Those are white people. Those are not blacks. And those are people that are benefiting from the reserves. But what do? You see ordinary people, ZANU-PF supporters, being told that no, this country is being destroyed by sanctions, this country is being destroyed by CCC. But we have seen bare these people that are looting the country. Honorable Scala is in prison, our change champion. He's in prison right now for a crime that he never committed. But Russia, we have said it very clear that if we can't deal with corruption in this country, it's going to be difficult to rescue this country. And we know that the culprits of corruption are those at the center. So they can't resolve the crisis of corruption. So what you see with ZAC and all these commissioners is just a mere PR game, not the people intended to deal with corruption in this country.
In your ending, you mentioned Henrietta Rishawa's, like how people on social media tagged it, catch and release. We just mentioned Henrietta Rishawa because she's the one you mentioned in your comment. And then also versus the arrest and being held in custody of Job Sikala. So I'm sure this is some of the problems that you would, as CCC, you would say that these are the problems that we have as Zimbabwe, even as CCC and even as citizens of Zimbabwe at large. These are some of the problems that we have. But with this problem still happening 42 years on, and the what do they call it? The resolutions, but are not yet being put in place by the electoral body and all the other political parties involved. Is there a chance? You know, I was talking to someone behind the scenes who's a triple C, and I was talking to them about the chance of triple C making it despite electoral reforms, and he said it's not a chance of if, but it's a position of we're speaking from a place of hope and from what is on the ground. Triple C is going to make it despite there not being electoral reforms in this country.
Of course, look, we have said we publicize our document, and I'll share it with you, called Prepare, which is a pre-electoral pact on reforms. There are deep fundamental reforms in this country which will take us years to resolve, but there are certain things that we think that are minimalistic that we can do to have a credible election. Like we have said, for us, this election is not just about a victory for Triple C, but it must be the victory for the people of Zimbabwe. Even if the government is not Triple C, let the electoral process reflect the will of the people, because we are just but a competitor in an electoral process with different political parties, and we must have a credible process. Even if we don't emerge as victors in that electoral process, we must be able to have a process that is credible. We must have a pact among political parties to agree that to say these are the minimum things that we have to resolve. For example, the printing of the ballot issue does not need years. They just have to be an agreement so that we just follow the law. Where is the ballot being printed? Where is it being stored? How is it being distributed? That's it. It's as simple as that. Media reforms give us access to state media, right? So that you have ZANU-PF here, you have another party there, Triple C there. Let us debate to say, what is it that we intend to do? There are key questions in this country that are being asked by different people, whether it's ordinary people or the middle class. One of the dominant questions is about policies, right? We have said, give us access to state media so that ZANU-PF can come and say, this is what they propose on resolving the debt crisis. We have our proposition. Let ZANU-PF come and say, how do they want to resolve the question of joblessness? We have our policy position on jobs creation, qualitatively and quantitatively. There are questions around energy in this country. We have said, we have got a proposition. We answer in our New Zimbabwe blueprint how we are going to be dealing with questions of, energy in this country, because we need to industrialize our country. Doing so needs us to be invested in energy. We have got propositions that we have produced. So we think that there must be a platform for all political parties. If ZANU has dominant ideas, if they think they can resolve this country better, whether it's a debate on sanctions, whether it's a debate on anything, but let us be given free airplay. Let Maduku with his party come and say his views. Let Kisnot Mukwaji with his view come and say his view. Let Advocate Nelson Chamisa, the incoming president, also go and share with the people of Zimbabwe, right? When we get into government, we don't want to create a vindictive political order where those who differ with government are not allowed to air their views, where journalists, look what happened to Hopo, he was harassed because he was exposing corruption, and only for now for the people to realize that, look, this is what has been happening behind the scenes. We must build strong institutions, because people like Honorable Job Scala have been failed by a captured judiciary that answers to the political elite with political objectives. The judiciary must be independent. Whether it's Triple C or any other party in government, the judiciary must be there to defend and interpret the constitution of this country, right? The legislature must be able to independently interpret the law. So that is the kind of political order we think we must bring. There are difficult issues, of course. People are going to be arrested, jailed, abused. You know, that is the nature of any democratic struggle. But ZANU cannot be a hero in the transformation struggle. It is impossible. One can't be a hero in two struggles. We said, ZANU-PF, you liberated us. We appreciate you because you are a hero to liberate our country, but one can't be a hero in two struggles. We have attained political independence. Let's go to the next stage of economic and transformational independence, right? That struggle of nanotechnology, that struggle of artificial intelligence cannot be led by the analog generation. They have done their part. We are not vindictive. We are there not to replace the state, but to occupy it with the intention to broaden it, with the intention to make it benefit the ordinary people. That is the direction of Cde. It's not there to vindictive, to try and say, no, because this one was differing with us, they must be arrested. That's not our focus. Our focus is to say, how do we get into government, build a big economy for the benefit of the many and not the few.
Okay, Cde, the spokesperson here, Gift Ostalos Siziba, is saying Cde's mandate is simply getting into the government and ensuring that they're building this country of Zimbabwe for the citizens, not for the few political elites. There's been talk, like I said, some of my questions are stuff based on the response, recommendations, comments and tweets, conversation from the street and even from social media. There's been talk of the Government of National Unity, the GNU, and this is some of the conversation that came from Jacob Mafume's mother's funeral, from Chief Sharon Bira. I was dying to ask you this question. What is the position of the party when it comes to these remarks or the idea of a government of national unity?
Look, I think what must be discussed of what the chief president of the Chief Council said, for me, were basically three things. Number one, the chief said unequivocally so that we must have tolerance in our politics, right? Addressing all the chiefs that fall under his presidency and all the traditional leadership and all the people of Zimbabwe, that we must have elections where we differ at the level of ideas, where we're able to differ as brothers to build our country, because at the end of the day, we all bear our loyalty to the flag of Zimbabwe. So the chief made it very clear that Zimbabweans must not be able to kill each other or to beat each other on account of politics. So the message was to support us, whether they are of Cde, whether they are of ZANU-PF, and all those people that have been used traditionally to instigate politically motivated violence. That let everyone have the freedom to associate with the party of their choice. Why that message is important, and more importantly in Masvingo, because Masvingo is predominantly a rural province. And what we have seen in Masvingo is that there's been a lot of violence in the country. And so his message to the people of Masvingo, message to his people under his chiefdomship, is that let's not have violence, inter-party violence or intra-party violence. Number two, what the chief said that is not being talked about. The chief appreciated President Chamisa, of course, as an incoming president. He appreciated President Chamisa's brilliance, which many have tried and suppress and not to put in the political market in this country. The chief in his own ways appreciated President Chamisa as someone who's brilliant, in my view, meaning obviously someone who's capable to take our country forward. Number three, the chief again made it very clear that the traditional leadership is not a partisan infrastructure, that the traditional leadership is an institution that must maintain its autonomy, that must be able to work with whatever political party is there that is governing. Of course, the remarks about unity, the remarks about making sure that people come together, we have said it very clear that we believe that there must be a dialogue of different political actors to converse about the electoral process, because that is what is at the table, not a dialogue to share political power. That's where we differ about the proposed elite pacts by different people. Majority of them are not just even ZANU in our respective view. The proponents of this so-called government of national unity are people who have been relegated out of the politics of our country and are supposed to be weaved into the dustbins of history. These are the people who tried to masquerade as an authentic opposition, tried to be fiefdoms of the ruling party, being controlled. You know what happened during the constitutional court challenges, and them emerging and saying, no, we are the left people. But the by-election buried them in total. And now, because they realize that it's now over, the day of the jackal is coming, the people of Zimbabwe want to send an emphatic message in terms of who in the politics of this country. So these now have been going subterraneanly to try and negotiate with their masters to say, no, let's abandon election, and no, we are not preoccupied by that. We are preparing our vehicle for the election. We are preparing for an election. We are preparing to govern. As I'm speaking to you right now.
You're preparing for an election and you're preparing to govern.
Of course, we don't want to go into government come August without clarity of thought in terms of who is going to be doing what, who's going to be where, and how do we change the status of our people in the first 100 days. So we're going to be articulating our 100-day plan, how we are going to do it. I just came from our workshop with some of our experts from different parts of the world in the African continent who are helping us because we want Zimbabwe to be one of the giants. So when we say it in rallies, we then go to boardrooms and say, look, we explain it in rallies through poetry, because when you're in rallies, we speak in poetry. But when we're in boardroom, we speak in prose. We then say, look, gentlemen, gentle ladies, how do we create these things that we've promised our people? We have said we want to make sure that we transform our country. We build roads, we build modern transport systems and so forth. How do we do it qualitatively? How does our economy, where are we going to get the money? Who's going to give us this? Who's going to give us that? Who's going to be responsible to negotiate our debt issue? Who's going to be making sure? So we've brought experts to, obviously our key focus is on our macroeconomic framework in terms of how to build a big economy and how we are going to be financing these things that we are promising our people during rallies, right? So that's what we are occupied ourselves in. The street conversation about us going for coffee and I mean, these are people who have their wishes about what must happen, but we've got our strategic focus and direction. We are preoccupied by the agenda to make sure that our vehicle is well oiled to go into an election and to make sure that there's transition in this country, because at the center of Zimbabwe's crisis is how do we have a democratic transition after winning an election.
There you have it. Just in case you're some of the people who were wondering if Triple C has the idea or is entertaining the idea of a government of national unity, Mr. Ostalos here has clarified that what they're focusing on, what they set their mind to do at the moment is oiling the vehicle for the elections, and the oiling and making sure that they're ready to govern. These are the two things that the Triple C, which is the Citizens Coalition for Change, is focusing on. And with that focus and getting ready to win the election and to govern, has the party set a criteria for candidates, for candidate selection as we're getting into the elections, be it for your councillors or for your members of parliament?
Of course, that's what we're doing across the country. We started with Harare, meeting our change champions and cluster leaders, what some traditional political parties will call the structure. For us, it is the infrastructure. So we were meeting our organizers and drivers of the movement from below to converse about the process of selecting and electing people to represent the party. And one of the things that we're obviously talking about is our template, which we call the candidate selection process. This candidate selection process is going to be more democratic than ever. This candidate selection process is going to encompass not just members of our party, but different stakeholders in communities, because the yesteryear experience, has taught us that you might go into an election with councillors and candidates that does not reflect the will of the people in that particular area. And what happens is that there's a mismatch between our presidential candidate and council and parliamentary candidate. And when we don't have a supermajority in parliament as our strategic target, it means that it's going to be difficult for us to govern, because we are targeting a majority in parliament. So that's why we have to make sure that our candidates are people that are coming from the people, not from the leadership. The yesteryear experience is that there were people who were coming in being chosen by political elites because they have relationships with different leaders in the party, or having worked together, or having came from different struggles together. We think that we must go to a community, converse with the people, say, yes, this is what the members of our party are saying, but what do you say ye as residents association, as teachers, as traditional leaders? So when these people come together and give their opinion, then we're able to say this one is a candidate that reflects the will of the people in the community. So you will see that we're going to be giving our people nomination forms where our people are going to be nominated to be councillors, to be a member of parliament, or to be a presidential candidate. Let me tell you, Tino, when you subcontract your victory and your future in the hands of politicians, the difficulty is that we create a sense of entitlement That no, that's why you see people saying, no, we died for the country. Because ordinary people then cannot say, no, we were part of the struggle. We know that the Liberation Project was effort and collective effort of ordinary people. Let the democratic breakthrough be the collective effort of the oppressed, of ordinary people, so that they've got a stake in the transition, they've got a stake in the future of this country, so that when we become the alternative, and I said when, not if, because it's a question of time, when we become the alternative, the people of Zimbabwe must be able to hold us to account by virtue that the victory that we are going to encompass is their victory collectively as a people, so that we don't become entitled and say, we liberated you, so you must be able to fight us so that you reign. We must be able to say, we run our path. If the people say, Comrade Ostalos and the Chamisa generation, you have done your part, you must live to the other generation, we must be able to live in peace because we came in peace. Right? So we must not create a creeping sense of entitlement to politicians by subcontracting our victory and our future in their hands. So Zimbabwean citizens are being called to duty to make sure that they participate collectively by, number one, registering to vote, and number two, coming out to vote, number three, by defending their victory. Once we do that as ordinary people, once we do that as Zimbabwean citizens, we're able to hold those who are going to come to power to account. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ostalos. I think you and you've also answered part of the question that I had, which was to do with the measures that the Citizens Coalition for Change has put in place to ensure that the election results is not disputed. And you mentioned how that these were lessons for you, and then you've managed to make sure that if we want to defend our victory, that means then we have to be able to account for the numbers that we have. You guys, the CCC has people, has agents in all the different polling stations. So I'll skip that question. And lastly, Ostalos, I know this could be a tricky question, but you know what? You're the spokesperson. So if not coming from you, there's no the deputy spokesperson. If not coming from you or the spokesperson, then it's not going to come from anyone else. With the elections in just a few months, and Zimbabweans are taking to the poll to decide if this is the year that there's going to be change, or if it's just a continuous reign by the ruling party. What margin is the Citizens for Coalition Change projecting to win? And remember, when I asked the question about the countryside, but I know particularly where my father comes from, is known for all the wrong reasons, but there's a story for another day. You say that you want to debunk the myth that ZANU-PF is popular and loved in the countryside. So by what margin is CCC projecting to win the 2023 election, and what is informing this projection?
Thank you very much.
I'm sure, I know, before you respond, I know he's going to be very passionate in his response to this particular question. You can go ahead, Ostalos.
That's a very important question, and I think that it obviously requires thought leadership rather than just mere talk. I think that for now, we base our projections on the researches that have been done by independent institutions. The first one obviously being the one done by MPOI. We think that we are going to win the presidency with more than what is required at law, and be able to occupy the presidency. And then we think that our projections were going to win all the urban councils that are going to be up for grabs. And we think that we're going to get half of the rural district councils in this country. And we think that we are going to win the necessary parliamentary majority in the next election. That is actually now our focus. We've done massive work on the presidential campaign. We're now focusing on making sure that we win the parliamentary majority. To answer you in black and white, Tino, and of course you have got the honor to know this and the honors, because we haven't said it publicly. We're commissioning a report. Our research unit is actually doing a research as we speak to gather the feelings of the people, to gather the projections from different stakeholders, obviously registered voters. We are targeting different people in the countryside, in urban areas, so that we come up with the quantitative figure. So before we go into the election, we'll be having that quantitative figure. But for now, what we have are researches that have been done, even by regime itself. We know the researches that they've conducted and what they are predicting, and they are predicting a Chamisa victory and a CCC victory, and consequently a democratic breakthrough. So all these are informing our thinking in the boardrooms, but we're also commissioning our own research to try and have it in our own desk that we are able to inform particularly our campaign, because where we are going to be going this time is not us waking up and saying the organizing department wants us to go to Binga because they like Binga. We are going to be doing programs informed by this research. So once the research is out, it's going to be given to our members and change champions across the country and different organs that are going to be helping the party towards its democratic breakthrough. So we are going to be doing a more scientifically informed campaign rather than just something that comes from the air. So we are going to be informed in terms of why we should go to Binga and not Gokwe, why we should go to Nembuzia and not Kweru Eben. So all these are going to be informed by this research, and that research is going to be very important for us in the pre and the post election, so that we're able to evaluate our capacity to win and how our machinery that we've been building for the past 1 year is strong enough to give us a democratic breakthrough.
So we've seen the yellow rallies, the yellow campaign with people in yellow at your rallies, and be it in urban Zimbabwe or in the countryside. How are you seeing to it? How are you accounting for those people, so that even when you do then the final push towards the elections, which are in a few months, those numbers, the yellow that we're seeing at these rallies, at your campaigns, are going to be, those numbers are going to make sense when it comes to the polls and when it comes to vote counting? How are you going to account for that? Because if you look at the ruling party, they can account for their members, and starting from cell to all the way up to the constituency. So how is the Citizens Coalition for Change tackling this, and how are you going to account for your numbers at these rallies and campaigns? How is this going to translate also into the numbers of the people? Is it going to also translate into victory for Triple C?
No, thank you very much. That's an important question, and I think that for us, Triple C, what we agreed on this time is that we have to count and measure our victory. And there has been a lot of half-baked intellectual submissions and intellectually dishonest debate about that no, ZANU-PF is able to account for people in their cells, and these are the numbers. And you see them obviously through their newspaper lying to Zimbabweans that because these are the cells that we have and so forth. We can be able to quantitatively prove to you that these are the numbers of people. What these people don't know, we have got what we call street point persons. What these people don't know is that we've got what we call household point persons, right? And for those who want to be questioning, we obviously don't want to be saying a lot of things in terms of our strategic interventions. But what we have done this time is to making sure that yes, there has been consensus by genuine Zimbabweans to say, how are we going to account for our victory? So the victory starts in-house. We are having an infrastructure that we're able to account for before the election. That's why I said we've commissioned the research to be able to look outside our movement, because inside our movement we're able to account how many people we have in this area, how many people we have, and we're able to say, if we go into an election, these are the approximate numbers that we might get in KwaZulu. But what we can't do is to publicize those numbers for the benefit of those who compete against us. But we are doing a more scientific organization of the party and organization of the support base, so that we're able to account for the people that are with us and for the people that, as a baseline, these are the people that are going to vote for Triple C. But beyond that, what we've also done, Tino, is to ensure that when we account for our people, this time, if you look at all the public meetings that we've done, we've made sure that we send an emphatic message and a call for Zimbabweans, particularly those who support our movement, to go and register to vote. Because it's not important and almost useless when you support Triple C and don't vote, right? Because you might come to a rally and at the end of the day don't vote. And it's happening across political parties, particularly the majority that you see in ZANU-PF rallies. They are there because of trinkets and trappings of ZANU-PF, whether it's food, packets, soya beans, and a cup of rice and so forth, right? But the people that come to Triple C rallies are authentic Zimbabweans who are eager for change. So our focus, and when you write in the post-election articles, and when you do your interviews, and when you talk about Triple C's victory, one of the things that you have to tell future generations, Tino, is how Triple C under Nelson Chamisa uniquely invested in turning the qualitative majority into a quantitative political electoral dividend. That is our focus. This way we are focusing on turning the qualitative majority that come into our rallies into a quantitative electoral majority. That is our focus. So we are focusing and make sure that everyone has a baseline in its assumption that supports Triple C must be able to go to the ballot and cast their vote. And that is going to be one of the major significant players on our victory in the next election.
Okay, thank you very much, Ostalos. There you had it. If we didn't answer, if we didn't ask some of the questions that you had for Gift Ostalos Siziba or for the Citizens Coalition for Change, please put it in our comment section. Please retweet, tweet, and comment, share with other people. Just put them in our comment section, and we'll show maybe when he still has time in his busy schedule with the elections coming up, maybe we'll again bring him up on the big talk so that he can then answer those questions that we'll have for him and with regards to Citizens Coalition for Change. This was all we had for you on this episode of Big Talk. My name is Tete Ostalos, and thank you very much, Ostalos, for taking time from your busy schedule to come and actually take this interview with me. It was a great honor to have you on the show today.
Thank you very much, Tino.
Okay, and so till we meet next time, don't forget to like, retweet, comment, share with your friends. Tell a friend to tell a friend. This was the Big Talk with Tete Ostalos, and this is brought to you by Citizens Voice Network. Until we meet again for the next episode, it's goodbye for now.